So welcome to this section, this panel discussions before lunch. So I wish that we won't bore you too much before the lunch, so you can eat more. And so today we have, the great speakers here. As the moderator, basically, I'm here to prompt the ChatGPT of five, great, the researchers about what we should do and what's the business opportunities for the future. And so we have two data scientists. One is Srini, my old friends, and also Kel Yang over there. And we have, Chongqian Dr. Li from TSMC. And we also have one business experts. And we have Eric. Eric used to head the Microsoft research in Beijing. And right now he is more focused on the education of AI and also the startup venture, startup, the entrepreneurships. I think I opened it already. Okay. So because we have three the speakers already presented their viewpoints about the future of generative AIs, and I would like to have Kel Yang and to have the chance to introduce himself and also his works first. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. This is pretty good. I'm Kalyan, and I work, as you mentioned, I'm a data scientist. I work a lot with data. One of the interesting things about all this AI is that what fuels AI is data. So very interesting thing that we have noticed is that the access to data is limited because enterprises have data stores for which they have a lot of access controls, or sometimes even just availability of data is limited. So these are things where you haven't collected enough data yet. So how do you mitigate these problems when you're trying to build Gen AI models? So a lot of my work focuses on creating synthetic data that looks like real. Ironically, I don't know if ironic or paradox is the right word, but ironically, Gen AI models themselves help you create that data, that synthetic data. So you build Gen AI models, create synthetic data, use that to train more models. So I'll talk a lot about that this afternoon.
Okay, that's wonderful because currently for Gen AI or all AIs, we have lack of enough data. So using Gen AI as a new tool to generate enough data is very important for the future. And later we will have more discussion on that. And how about Eric? Eric has many different kinds of experience from researchers to educators. And Ryan is more like a venture VC for startups. So I would like Eric to speak something for us.
Great, thank you, Ted. So I'm Eric Chang. Currently, I'm the executive director for for Taiwan AI Foundation, which is basically focused on promoting AI both in society and industry in Taiwan. And also, as Ted mentioned, I'm a venture partner for WI Harper. So I'm working with a lot of startups, especially those ones that are actually trying to build new capabilities with AI so that they can focus on serving their customers better. And then previously, I was with Microsoft Research in Beijing, where I focused a lot on using AI for healthcare, essentially using AI to either look at medical images or also to do medical text processing. Thank you.
And then I will take advantage of everybody's individual special expertise. And to come, one good thing for moderator is that I don't need to answer the questions. All I have to do is to shoot the questions and try to prompt them and to get the answers. And so I would like, as an engineer, I would like to study this way, is that I focused on the data first, then I focused on the Gen AI model application in the industry, and how Gen AI can further, provide more business opportunity for the future, and what's the implications of Gen AI for the young startups. So I'll go through this, this way. So the first question is to my old friend Srini, but you didn't show my photos in the opening. It's so strange. Yeah, you have my feelings.
I didn't meet you in 1999. It was later.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And so basically, as you know that data is very important, and in different kind of application domains, data privacy, data security, and also data governance is a key for the data-driven digital economies based on AI. So I would like to Srini to further to talk about his thoughts about the data and also its implications for when we apply Gen AI in the real application of business cases. What would be the most important things that we have to be aware of, and also what would be the new opportunities for the researchers? Yeah.
Thanks, Ted. I talked about privacy, and hopefully you folks like my talk. The things that I didn't mention were, or I barely mentioned, were policy and law. And so when you talk about governance, I mean, I did mention compliance or non-compliance, but it's a challenge. It's a real challenge to take these semantic privacy definitions or any precise definition where you're proving things and connect them up to HIPAA, which is essentially the regulatory body for medical data in the United States, or GDPR, which is data for individuals in Europe, or CCPA in California equivalent. So there's actually a Future of Data initiative at MIT that's led by Danny Weitzner, who's a lawyer. He has a JD. And part of this initiative is trying to connect together the semantic definitions to policy. And copyright is another example. I mean, what copyright law is extremely complicated. It's not as simple as what I described on privacy. I think there's a big gap. So I don't have solutions for you. I mean, one of the reasons I didn't talk about it was because I didn't have much to say. I will say that there's progress being made, especially in the copyright front, where you have a situation where the very fact that a particular artist's data was used and touched to go create a model is a problem. I mean, if you said you've touched it, well, I mean, you affected the model in some way, and you're probably going to get sued for it. And there's obviously all these lawsuits going on against OpenAI, for example. But on the other hand, I think if you think about synthesis and you think about deep fakes and you think about creating fictitious actors, who perhaps bear some resemblance to stars, celebrities, and so on, you have to be really careful. And I think there's I think a great opportunity to try and define what it means in the machine learning space to violate copyright, right, or to obey copyright. Synthetic data and these synthetic examples are going to have to target that. I mean, right now, I think you can kind of solve the privacy problems, but I feel like the governance problem is just much bigger. So don't have a whole lot of answers for you, other than saying I think there's some simple cases that can be ironed out. You just show that you have a clean room and you didn't touch all of this data, and then therefore you don't violate copyright. But outside of that, I think, well, the jury's still out on what to do. Yeah.
Okay. So following that, I would like, I have questions for Carrie Young. And of course, that data is a king. So we need them data to generate the models, but oftentimes we cannot get enough, data. And so we just proposed a very, interesting, viewpoints about how to generate synthetic data, and so that you can have a much bigger, data set for the AI applications. I would like to understand the limitations and also challenges about such approaches, and also that, please give us more, much more, broaden the applications of such approaches. For example, that currently, once you have the data you need labels to label the data. So the point is that whether you can create a generative AI to generate the labeling data instead of generating the raw data. So I would like to understand your comments on that.
Great. Yeah, I think synthetic data has been already, it's been showing a lot of promise in a couple of applications. So one example is that where you use to build classifiers and you have training data that are labeled, and it's a sentiment classifier or something that you're building from the text, and you just tweak one word and it suddenly changes the meaning of that. So that's one way you can try to attack the classifier. So we call that also synthetic data. The other way is that you can take one sentence in your training data set and create multiple versions of it that preserve the same meaning. And interestingly enough, we use Gen AI models to do that. So we just create the synthetic data using Gen AI models as well. And that allows the classifier to be better trained if you create more examples, especially when you have cases in which the class label is extremely imbalanced. So you have very rare occurrence of it, whether it's a hate speech classifier or a financial. Nowadays, we also want to put classifiers on top of chatbots in financial area where you're not trying to give financial advice. So there are very few examples, rare examples that you have, and you want to amplify them when you're training a classifier. So that's one classic case where synthetic data has helped, and we use Gen AI models to do that. The limitation still, one of the biggest misconceptions is that we use Gen AI to create synthetic data and feed it back to Gen AI to train it. That's not true. We actually have a lot of human labor involved in between, where we actually program the synthetic data generators to purposefully address a particular data problem, whether it's a bias problem or whether it's the rare occurrence of examples in the training data. So there's a lot of checks and balances that we do. So it's still a human-driven process, an engineered process. It's not completely automatic.
But I can see a lot of potentials. You are looking forward to your presentation this afternoon. And so back to the deployment of generative AIs. We have Chongshen. Dr. Lee just gave a wonderful the speeches on Gen AIs, but because he's from the TSMC, from the semiconductor industry, and one of the questions that I would like to understand is that how can we use Gen AI in the semiconductor industry, and or Gen AI for the digital twin of fab or the supply chain, and how can we what's the opportunity, and also what's the benefit and the challenges around it? Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for the question. So let me address this question in 4 different areas. I think that the most easiest part of applying Gen AI within the semiconductor or manufacturing environment in general is actually helping the professional, both within and adjacent to this industry, to do the knowledge management. And both within the company as well as the companies that this company need to work for, there are a lot of very specialized knowledge, terminology, and facts that are not really within the fingertips. And therefore, knowledge management is probably the immediate area. And right now, we are actually seeing companies in this space already apply the various kinds of dialects of the LLMs for this application. So the second area that which may be of near-term impact is within the manufacturing or production process. For example, for defects, I was referring to the black swan effect. It's difficult to actually collect a training data set with all the possible defects. And therefore, how are you going to use the synthetic method to generate both defects you have seen as well as defects you have not seen, so that you can overcome the black swan effect? These are also areas that have been already seen in this industry. We are beginning to see that Gen AI being applied to the supply chain For example, how are you going to anticipate all kinds of demand scenarios? I'm emphasizing scenarios, not necessarily based on facts, but counterfactual. How are you going to see what happened when, let's say, the sun rise from the west? What is going to happen within the supply chain system, on the supply chain front? And then finally, within the digital twin, or try to build a twin, either at the fab level or at the multi-phase, multi-site, and then multi-country for the entire manufacturing company. This probably will take many years into the future to actually build up this capability. But I would say this will be the ultimate challenge for this industry.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm not sure that we have time to, to talk about, but that would be something related to data security, because the data and the model and digital twin you are talking about actually are very sensitive. So I'm not so sure that you try to use large language model in the open cloud, or you want to do private cloud, everything on premise. And if you want to do distributed, connected, your database with, the so many sites, and how you can manage, the data security. And this would be, something maybe we can discuss, during lunchtime. That would be something that I'm very interesting. Maybe certainly should have a much better answer later. But right now, because we are running out of...
Can I have 2 quick comments on this? Yeah. So number one, I think zero knowledge proof approach that we have been using the blockchain is potential one way of not sharing data, but sharing the derived knowledge from the data. Number 2, full homomorphic, where you do the computation in fully encrypted domain. These are the 2 potential things that may be promising.
And Srini has a third one.
Always.
Actually, I mean, I agree with you. Those are 2 good approaches. And I want to mention that one of my current contracts with Wistron is about accelerating fully homomorphic encryption, because it's quite slow.
So that full homomorphic actually happened when I was leading the cybersecurity team at IBM Research. It's a summer student from Stanford who actually, during the summer, come up with the whole approach. So we anticipated it won't mature in another 2 decades. But apparently it's actually happening sooner than that.
We can ask ourselves questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
We only have, I think I would like to spend the rest of the time for mostly for business implications of, the generative AI, because that's, many people are very keen to understand what would be the most promising opportunity of Gen AI. The Gen AI, what I'm talking about is not only related to the language. I would like to explore more opportunity about large multimodal models, applications, or if possible, that we can make it smaller and sustainable. And so I would like to, have George, comment on this on the business side. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so, when I was talking in my session, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that you can do now. And largely that's for individual workers, to make them smarter, to help them grow. And the real challenge then is how do we transform the processes to make that work. And there, I think, Ted, what you were talking about, not a single monolithic giant model, but a set of smaller models of different techniques will be the answer. The trick there, though, is that, where do you look first? You tend to look for places where the benefit is obvious. If I just change this thing, it's 10% better. And these broader changes are going to require rethinking the whole process. And that takes more of a top-down approach to think, instead of, okay, the four silos will adjust to what they're doing, how do we get them together to rethink the process? And so just some examples, one thing I was hoping you would say and you didn't, and I want to learn more, is that in the computer-aided design software and in PowerPoint and Canva, the computer can do your initial layout very nicely. And then you adjust it from there. And so I was hoping to hear, well, we can lay out our chips in a different way, but you didn't say that. So that's interesting, right? And I'd love to hear the answer, but tell me the answer in a minute, right? And similarly, if we we know that in processes that if you optimize little pieces, that's fine. But if you remove a whole piece, you can redesign the whole thing. The generative AI can actually help us formulate some of those ideas also. How would this look if? And that may allow us to make the bigger changes out there.
One of the common...
Sorry, I asked you, is it okay? Can I ask you that question? Sure.
Okay, so let me respond. So since my company doesn't do actually circuit design officially, so I'm not commenting on that, but I think doing the layout for tools, however, has a similar flavor, and this is actually where the Gen AI can apply, where you really generate all the possibility how the tools need to be put in the plan. And actually in the GTC conference, Wistron, Foxconn, and other companies have been showing how they optimize their operation through this kind of methodology.
Very cool, thank you.
I do think that layout optimization, placement and route, of course, have been a historical focus within the design automation environment. So I will let Cadence and Synopsys to comment on that.
Thank you.
But I would like to, the response to the questions as well. And currently, for the people use generative AI for generative design. So the problem is not how many designs you can have. The point is that how you choose the right design. So the team's role is changing from developing the new designs, and change their role as the as the manager to select the right designs and as the products for the next phase. And that's also a challenge as well. You need to train people in different way, and so that's different. And so that's another challenge that I'm facing right now. It's not about how many designs you have, proposals you have. The point is how you pick the right design and how you quickly verify and validate that design. For me, it's very important. Yeah.
Well, and that gets at these culture questions too, right? What does this mean for my identity? A friend of mine studied NASA, the space agency. When they went instead of building everything, they started doing innovation contests. Who could suggest different answers? And it meant the engineers inside NASA had to think that they were a different person. They were not the person to invent things. They were the person to integrate things.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard identity challenge. And it sounds like in your case, this identity challenge could be in many other places too.
Right. So the last question goes to Eric. I think the current development of generative AI, and basically it seems that only hyperscale company are offered to provide that kind of computing resource and data as a resource to come up with more general purpose AI. And what would be your suggestions about for the young startups, how they can take advantage of that kind of AI and also develop their own business based on that kind of progress?
Great. Yeah, I think it's definitely true that it takes a lot of resources to train up a large generative AI model. But I think there are many opportunities for small companies, because you can imagine that using the analogy that a generative AI model is like a well-trained college undergrad. So any small company can actually sort of bring this college undergrad back and actually train that person to become an expert in a certain domain or certain area, right? So for example, if you are a company that's in cybersecurity, then you can actually leverage all the knowledge and all the cases you have in cybersecurity and say, can I train this AI to actually become an expert in cybersecurity so that I can actually look at all the cases of what happened before and then sort of do a prediction of how it's going to be happening in the future, and then actually be able to address much more quickly, because expertise is always in short supply. And if you can use AI to actually multiply the domain and the knowledge of your company, then you actually have a lot of opportunity. And similar type of opportunity exists, for example, in like healthcare, for example, right? I mean, essentially, how do you multiply the expertise of a doctor? Or, for example, even in smaller cases in consumer scenarios, right? I mean, you have probably heard of like a lot of different applications now that can help you to generate songs, generate videos, the movie scripts. And these are sort of like opportunities that large companies will not go into because they are so specialized, and in some cases, requires so much domain knowledge that it's very hard for a large company like Microsoft or like Google to actually go in and actually serve that market very well. But they are actually a very large opportunity. If you can create like a generative AI system that's great for generating comic books, right? I mean, that's not a huge opportunity that Microsoft will look into, but it can be a very profitable opportunity for a small company.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think vertical applications will be something that good opportunity for young startups. Yeah, please. Kel.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think this happened before generative AI and predictive AI too. I think predictive AI, very general purpose problems were solved by the big tech and large companies, but things where it required deep domain expertise, I don't think they were able to address that market. So, we work with wind turbine engineering companies and operations companies. They have a lot of domain expertise. There's no way you can just walk in with a generative AI model and solve their problems. And also, it also changes the role that they are actually doing right now. So the big opportunity is in verticals. If you pick a vertical that requires deep domain expertise, and there's a lot of people and processes already in place to solve some problems, and try to integrate generative AI, it's still a wide open challenge to work on that. So I think that actually is a very good point.
Another thing I would like to, that we only have 40 minutes before lunch. And so one of the things that I'm thinking that is, I'd like to seek for your comments and suggestions and recommendations for the Taiwan industry. As you know that, Taiwan industry is not just formed by high-end computer or semiconductor industry. Actually, we have very strong small and medium enterprises in Taiwan. And because of that, we have a very strong, ecosystem that is flexible enough and also resilient enough for all kind of new paradigm shifts. And that's the reason why we can survive for the past, 50 years. And we are still doing great. But, AI, especially generative AI, stands for the new challenges for these companies to transform themselves, to catch the future trend, and so that they can stay, competitive. And so I would like to, seek for your comments and suggestions on how they can, transform, and especially with very focused, because you are from MIT, how to upskill and reskill our, the talents to transform them as AI workers for the future.
Was that for me?
For everybody.
Okay,
so
great.
you can start with George. George, you just volunteer, yeah.
I think one of the things to think about is who needs what skills. And I thought the minister did a very nice job of that, saying that not everybody needs to know how to program these models, but maybe you need to be comfortable using the models. I think that's something we can do inside companies also. Figure out what roles need what kind of skill, and then help them get that skill. Because if you don't have the basic knowledge, then your answer is to reject. Your answer is to be afraid. But if you do have the basic knowledge, then you might actually start doing better work there. So separate the roles, give enough to each person without overdoing it.
Great. What about you?
So I want to follow up on what Chang Sheng said, which was about education. I think that's the huge opportunity. I mean, I guess I'm biased because I only worked for a nonprofit educational institution all my life. So that seems like the biggest thing. But everything from helping a student how to program, you need customized education. I think the reason MOOCs didn't work, MOOCs, massive online courses, which were supposed to destroy all the universities worldwide, they never really took off, was because you didn't have the one-on-one connection. And now the question is, will LLMs and technology that is going to support that, which is going to be specific to particular classes. I mean, I don't think you're going to get an LLM teaching a student how to debug and, writing like Shakespeare, right? That's just not going to happen. But there are examples of classes being created where there's a significant amount of infrastructure being added to one of these foundation models that is allowing students to essentially have virtual TAs, right? I mean, this could be huge. I mean, it's just the biggest thing I can think of. I mean, again, I'm biased. That if you can get to the point where 90% of the questions get answered basically cheaply, right? So, because the virtual TA doesn't cost as much as the regular TA. And that could just change the world, right? So, and the nice thing about it, one thing I will say is, I also noticed that the minister, had the chart on AI usage, and he didn't have full self-driving cars in there, right? Because this just don't work. Yesterday there's an article about some person who was challenged by Elon Musk to use FSD, and he had to stop his car from hitting somebody. So the point is that I think there's always going to be this human component, but I think this educational, I get it wrong, right? When I teach, I've been teaching for 36 years, I get stuff wrong. So it's okay in an educational context to get things wrong, as long as you can backtrack and fix it later. So I don't think these virtual assistants have to be like 6 nines of reliability. They get it wrong. 9 out of 10 seems pretty good to me, right? So anyway, so that's.
So this idea is really important, not only for just education in general, but also for diversity and inclusion. So we're developing something with Media Lab to do exactly this in the first Python class, but where we're testing is not at MIT. We're testing it at traditionally minority-serving institutions, places that don't have a lot of money, but they can help somebody move from having grown up in poverty to actually having a good life forward. And if we can give them that kind of tutor, they get a leg up that they wouldn't otherwise. The problem is, though, if you're working all day and taking classes at night, when you want to call the tutor, it's 2 in the morning, that tutor is not working. But if you don't get that question answered, you may fail the semester because everything builds on each other. So this idea of having this thing available for everybody, not only just because it's good education, but because it can help people succeed who, from their background, would not be allowed to succeed. It can help them.
Yes, how about George?
Okay, so maybe I just compliment a little bit from a slightly data-driven angle. So I had a chance to work with CPS, a lot of CPS when I was in PwC, and a lot of people trained in industrial engineering and operation research from TSMC. And I really had a chance to see that compared to whom I work with in terms of geologists or astrophysicists, the latter two are already very familiar with data, very comfortable with data, and hence all the tools they need to use to manipulate and manage and train and learn about the data. And therefore, it seems that the transition from those disciplines into this new world seems to be much more seamless than what I have seen in the, let's say, CPA or IEOR space. So I think, in a sense, perhaps what we could really work together as really collaboration across government, university, and industry is how can we really overcome that data barrier and the familiarity and the intuition about data within the discipline, and then with all the approaches that our distinguished colleagues have been introduced. That data barrier is probably what we need to overcome.
I think I'm so glad you mentioned about public private partnership, which is also very important here. And this is the reason why we also invited the minister here. And so what about Kiel Young?
I think the question is about how Gen AI can help folks to transform themselves going forward in skills. Quite frankly, I'm jealous that I'm not like 20 years younger. I wish I was, because if I look back at my own career, I think just internet and everything just transformed how the knowledge is dissipated. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't the case. I think I learned so much online. I think generative AI, LLMs will have the same sort of effect. I think you will have not necessarily centers of knowledge. The knowledge will be much more broadly available. If you look for it, you try to learn it. Of course, you have to filter it, and you have to take the right stuff, which existed for us also when we went back, when I was doing my graduate school. So I think there is a lot of potential in how you can use Gen AI to increase your skill set. You can learn more. You don't have to directly go to MIT and learn from it. I think MIT's knowledge is also probably captured a lot in generative AI models as well. It will change how we program, how we do programming, and how we use programming to build things. When I was an undergrad, I wrote matrix multiplication in C++. It took me 2 months to write it, and then when I went to grad school, it turns out 1-line code. So it just, over time, it has significantly changed, allowed me to build new things. So I think a lot of folks can use generative AI and what it enables to build new things and build more things, enter into areas where there's deep domain expertise required to enter. Yeah. So you can do that.
Yeah. Eric?
Sure. So I think for all organizations and for all people, right, you really need to focus on how AI can transform both your job and also your environment. So I've summarized into like 3 Fs, right? The first one F is far looking or far ahead. So it's no doubt that AI's capability will increase over time. So even though there are still a lot of gaps right now, it will just essentially improve over time so that the IQ of AI will become stronger and stronger. So if you have that belief, then you know that you have to start using it and actually start adopting it so that you can actually improve with it. And the second one is basically focus. And this is actually, especially for a smaller company, that's an advantage that large companies do not have, is that you can actually be very focused on a specific problem at hand, and you can actually devote a lot of resources to it. Because in a large company, there are so many different demands, it's very hard to have that kind of focus. But for a smaller company, you have that advantage. And the third is being fast. Again, that's the advantage for a smaller company. In a large company, you actually have a lot of coordination required before you can get anything done. But for a smaller company, you can actually sort of especially for individual, I mean, there are actually a lot of startups actually starting by very small teams. You can actually get very fast at adopting AI. So I would encourage everyone to basically really start leveraging AI in your daily lives regarding whether your job or your personal life, because the only way to really adopt and actually benefit from this transformation is actually get started. If not yesterday, then today. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. I think it's very important that the most important things for me is that simply to jump into the fishbowl, to swim with that Gen AI in order to understand it. Otherwise, you won't be able, you won't get a chance to have the very hands-on feelings about the AI and what it can do. And for me, for my research institute, it's very important. And so we only have 3 minutes. So everybody can have 30 seconds, as George suggested, and to give few words to the audience here, starting from George.
So my 30 seconds is, number one, try it out. Get comfortable with what it can do and what it can't. And number two, think beyond the first things that occur to you. Think for how to do the bigger changes, not just for generative AI, but how generative AI can integrate with other things to give you the right solution.
I need 30 seconds to think about it.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything George said, and I would say pick domains very carefully. I think if you pick domains that require a lot of expertise, domain expertise, that will help you grow a lot using Gen AI. Don't pick popular things because all popular things are picked by all popular people. So pick the ones that are least popular but require a lot of domain expertise.
Okay, I'm ready. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to use George's slide, which I liked very much. Don't forget the past. There's places that, as you said, regression, classification, these classical algorithms work just fine, right? Generative AI is not this the universal panacea. It's not this universal solution. But I think it's clearly, it can do things that the older technologies, haven't been able to do. And the example that as I said, I was most excited about was education. So, yeah.
Okay, so I think I will probably comment on the fact that I would view Gen AI is a tool in my toolbox. At the end of the day, the most important thing is I can come up with a solution that solves my problem. Potentially, I can transform my problem so that I can have the right solution to solve it. And I need to be familiar with what Gen AI can bring to me, but I also need to have the visibility of the broader available tools in my toolbox so that eventually I can figure out the best composition of the tools for solving my problem.
Yes, I would encourage everyone to actually help to introduce AI to young people in your circle, whether it's your children or people you know. Because I think especially for younger people, they should be growing up as AI natives, and if for some reason they are not able or currently aware of what AI can do, then the best thing you can do for them is essentially introduce them and guide them to the essentially the capability of AI, so that they can actually grow up and be very familiar and very comfortable using AI in their daily lives.
Last September in MIT, there is a special week called Generative AI Week. I was there for 4 weeks. And I got a chance to have a meeting with some dean of a College of Computing. And so we have something, some common seminars that we believe that the generative AI or AI things is not just about artificial intelligence. It's about augmented intelligence. How, the generative AI or AI will be as a tools to further strengthen or extend the human capability for the future. And so thanks for, all the panelists. It's wonderful, the sharings. And I think it's about time for lunch. So thank you.